Welcome to the greatest podcast ever, featuring DrayZera, performance artist, Jackie Hyde, professional wrestler, and singer-songwriter Dan Pettit.
Damn, he said to call him the other guy!
To DrayZera Uncensored! Subscribe, like and share, only on DrayZera Uncensored.
Welcome again to another episode of DrayZera Uncensored. Oh my lasagna! We have got a very, very special episode for you. We have got a one-to-one interview with the man behind my introvert journey to being visible, a speaker, podcaster, author, entrepreneur, OMG, but man like him is not getting cystic fibrosis, diabetes, or being an introvert to hold him back from achieving his dreams, and his dream is to totally be on this podcast. It is Michael Bryan. Hello.
Hi Dre, how are you?
I've had better days, but this ain't about me. But anyway, as we're recording this, we are shortly awaiting your book coming out. So, talk to me about your book, about my introvert journey to being visible. I mean, this sounds like a very intriguing book.
Well, the book basically takes people through inside my head, I guess, when I start to overcome my own insecurities, when starting to put myself out there, make myself as visible as possible, because when it's not your natural state to do that, when it's not your sort of desire, I guess, initially, to be visible, to be above the noise and all those things, I had to overcome a lot just to get started. And I realized that it was a cycle. So I had to repeat this thing that every time I got uncomfortable, every time I felt like quitting, there was a lot of common themes, but the book takes you through it step by step from what I went through, so that if you're going through it yourself, then it gives you a sense of, oh, this isn't brand new, this isn't not allowed to happen. Because some people only see the positive things. People only see, oh, the guy's on TV or he's on stage or any of those things. They only see the positive. They don't see what's happening for that person to do that. And that's what the book takes people through.
Wow. So what was your motivation behind the book in the first place? Like, as in, by that what I mean is that, so you've got this book, you've said to the world, like, this amazing journey because of being an introvert, because I'm a flick between the two, so I'm a bit of an ambivert myself, but how long in the process did it take you to get this book going in the first place? Because this kind of book didn't take like a few, like to brainstorm this idea. Did this take you years to decide to do this, or go ahead?
I mean, the book itself took maybe about between 3 and 6 months to write from start to finish, because I'm not a natural writer either, so writing was never my strength. So I had to force myself to write. Sometimes I had amazing weeks where I would do loads of writing, and then a week where I didn't feel like I could write anything at all. But yeah, it takes me from sort of being born with cystic fibrosis, about what it was like growing up with the conditions, how it sort of shaped me to a certain degree, but then it sort of picks out the main key things that happened, like having a friend that was diagnosed with diabetes and passing away before I was diagnosed, what that did to me. But I've had to live it to a certain degree before I could then write about it. So it's a bit different when you've got to write it as if I'm going through it, but it actually happened years ago. So that's kind of how it probably feels like it's happening one after the other, like most books tend to do. But it's a massive compression of like 2 decades, maybe a bit longer than 2 decades. into the book, because at the end of the day, without realizing it, I was doing my thing, if you will, and I was like a role model for people. I was an inspiration for people just by doing that. I didn't realize it at the time, but me practicing what I preach gave other people permission to live how they wanted to live. I didn't have to speak about it. I didn't have to tell it as such. But I realized that when I started to tell it, that impacted people again. Because not everyone sees everything that I was doing. So the book gave me the chance to shed some light on that and add weight to the fact that, I have been doing things despite the health conditions, despite being a quiet person naturally. Just saying that is enough for people to go, okay, maybe if he can do it, then I can do it as well. Some people are motivated by just my actions, just me doing things like this. Some people go, okay, let's do it. But they knew my story beforehand. They've known like the quiet version of me. And then when they see what I'm doing now, they keep telling me how inspirational I am because they know everything else.
Wow.
People that don't know that, people that only see Michael now, so they well, this is just normal for Michael. He's always done this. He does this all the time. But the truth is that's not the case. That was never the case. I hated being on stage. I hated being seen to begin with. I was a quiet person up until my online business started, because I realised that I had to not just talk to people, not just sort of engage with people, because when I was a tennis coach and personal trainer, I had to do that anyway. But when you're online and you're seeing people on podcasts and on stage and writing books, and it's just a completely different level that I'd never had experienced before. And when I realised that, this is what we want to do, it comes with expectations. It comes with standards. You can't want to help people and change lives and stay in the shadow of the same. You can't have this desire to help people and have no one know you exist. So when I realised that it does come with certain responsibilities or expectations, I had to fulfill those, and I was never going to achieve what I wanted to achieve. So it all came from the territory almost.
I think that's very important. I mean, cause while listening to you, I almost felt like I was going through my own self journey. Cause you know when you're listening to somebody and what you're saying is very deep and very thought provoking. It really hit me hard, because no juice, no all real here. I mean, because we can all no matter where we have been in our journeys in life, we can all attribute to things that have happened, things that have not happened, now there's something that really struck me when, researching about you. Now, what is mortality motivation?
So mortality motivation is something happening that makes you become hyper aware of your own mortality. And very often it's your processing of that fact, of that sort of incident that makes it change your life. Because some people have incidents happen, some people have traumatic moments and don't do anything with them. Other people do, people have had car crashes and that changes their entire life. And you go on this big journey of health and they've had a car crash. Some people go through the same experience but don't do anything about it. They just brush themselves down, recover, rehab, all that stuff, and just go about their life as it originally was, as best as they can, right? Depending on how bad the accident was. But there are people out there that are a bit more sort of meaning driven, meaning they'll try to find the meaning in something. They try to make the most of the opportunities that they have, even if they are bad ones. And I think those people process information differently. It's the only way I can sort of describe it, because some people can have these incidences, these traumatic experiences, and do nothing with them. And yet there are people out there that do. I think the main difference is what they make the experience mean to them, and then they go about making the changes afterwards.
I mean, it's very inspirational, like, for you to have come this far, especially with cystic fibrosis, because I loosely remember when I was in school, we were learning about cystic fibrosis. That's a pretty, that is pretty, difficult to deal with, I've been told. How, so for all those that don't know what cystic fibrosis is, for all the audience, tell the audience what that is and how has that affected your life?
Well, for those that don't know, cystic fibrosis, or CF, as it's commonly known, it's a genetic condition that affects my lungs mostly and my digestive system as well. Excuse me, bit of a croaky throat there. Because it kind of affects both of those two systems, and normally on a normal day, it barely affects me at all. But it is what's known as a degenerative condition, which basically means it gets worse over time. So when I was younger, I didn't feel any different at all. If I take all the medications, I don't feel any different at all. Medications, treatments, physios, exercise, you name it. If I keep on top of it, there's no issues at all. But I know that when I'm 40, it's going to be a very difficult and very different story to what it is now.
Wow. How old are you at the moment, if you don't mind me asking?
Sure.
How old are you at the moment, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 29.
29. Wow, you're younger than me. Wow. I'm 30.
Yeah.
We're about the same age, give or take. Wow.
Yeah, and I was diagnosed when I was 2 months old.
Wow. So you've known it all throughout your life.
Yeah, it was something that my parents had to deal with at first. You know, obviously when you're a kid, you don't know what's happening. You just sort of do what you're told.
Yeah.
As I got older, I always knew I was different from everybody else. So I always felt like, I was a bit tired when they weren't. I had to take these tablets and other kids didn't. I had to do all these treatments and medicines and be back into the hospital, and none of the other kids did that. So when you start to compare yourself when you're little, you start to build these beliefs, I guess, that you can't break. It's very, very rare someone really truly breaks the beliefs that are formed when they were like 5 years old.
Yeah.
One of mine was just how different I was from other people. And when I was doing things that other people weren't, it's very, very quickly, very easily to form the belief that I was the work in the room.
Yeah.
I wasn't, not just a lack of self-belief, not just a lack of self-worth. It was compared to everybody else, I am lesser than them.
It's just wow. It's just incredible. Like, I mean, like, for you to still be in your 20s and to have achieved so much. I mean, talk to us about how did you get on being on stage? How did you get on TV? And, like, you know what I mean? Like, how did that all come about? Because you must have had so much motivation to suddenly do all that kind of stuff. And of course, in your own show, the Ask Mike show, you've interviewed like various people, in high regard.
Yeah. The podcast itself started because I got a bit obsessed with learning things and learning from people. I was listening to podcasts myself.
Yeah.
And a combination of getting a lot from them and still having questions myself sometimes after the episodes. That it made me think, what if I could ask these people questions that I wanted to know?
Wow, it's almost as if this is kind of the reason why I'm still doing this podcast, and on an episode where I'm not interviewing somebody one-on-one, I usually have my co-host with me. It's kind of like, so yeah, I took a 3+ year break from doing this podcast, and this year I brought it back, and this was one of the main motivations to talk to people like you know what I mean? To listen to your story and to hear your stuff. But yeah, sorry, and then carry on. Like, talk us through, like, not just the podcast you've just been talking about, also getting on stage and TV. Go ahead, buddy.
Well, the whole stage thing was a bit weird because that started from my clients initially. So I was a personal trainer. I was also a tennis coach, and I got my first bit of press, if you will, at that point. So tennis coach, personal trainer, with health conditions. You know, it's almost like you wouldn't expect it. You know, I was definitely breaking a few labels, if you will. You know, he's got a health condition, and yet he's a personal trainer. Who is this guy, kind of thing? So it became quite straightforward for me to get local news, if you will.
Yeah.
And my clients saw it, essentially. I was in the local newspaper. Clients saw it. They showed it me and said, "Is this you?" And I said, "Yeah, it is." Because when you spend so long trying to be like everybody else, trying to fit in to a certain degree, I didn't tell people I had these conditions. I wasn't wearing like a label or a sign saying I'm ill.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't something I really wanted people to know. So I got to a point where I wasn't the same as other people. I was better than other people. I was fitter, stronger, healthier. I built my life that way because you know health conditions. You don't have
And
choice.
you had to adapt, didn't you? It's kind of like almost like relearning the wheel in a way. But then again, because you've lived with this your whole life, you've kind of like learned it throughout your life anyway.
Yeah, the cystic fibrosis is definitely sort of, if you're born with no legs, then it's your normal, right? It's very different to someone that loses their legs in a car crash or something. It's a different experience, right? Because when you're born with it, you find a way and it's your normal, and you sort of accept it to a certain degree. That was what it was like for me. It was my life. It was normal. So when that happened, I didn't want people to give me an easier ride because of the conditions, because at the end of the day, they didn't stop me, and they still don't. So why would I want people to know? Why would I need them to know? It was a need-to-know basis at that point, and my clients didn't need to know because I was fitter than them, healthier than them, stronger than them, thinner than them. If I then tell them that I had the conditions and use that as a sort of what's your excuse kind of thing, it made them feel worse, not better. So I didn't tell them. I didn't tell a lot of people unless they really needed to know. And when they found out, they weren't overly pleased about them coming to me with their problems, right? Like, I don't have time to work out. Meanwhile, I work out like 3 times a day. You know, it's a very different story when you go to someone with problems and they have problems of their own. It's a different sort of it's a different relationship with you after that point. You can't unsee it, you know? So I had to calm them down at first. I had to reconcile them and just say, look, I've got problems just like you. You've got problems as well. Like it doesn't downplay your problems just because I have problems too. So after that, then it was like, well, I don't have any excuses anymore. I can't come to you and say I don't have time. I can make time. I can't come to you and say, oh, I don't have the energy to cook food or anything when you do. So I can. It was a very much sense of if I can do it, they can do it as well. And after that, they got results so much quicker. They were losing weight like it was, talking like 5-6 pounds a week, some of them. And they were loving it. They didn't feel like they were losing weight. They felt happier because of it. And I started to realize that my story can get people results just because they know it. Just through knowing there's somebody out there that's doing, yes, better than them in some ways, with a lesser starting point, that's enough for some people to pull their finger out and make things happen. And then they started to tell me, you know, more people need to hear this because there's so many people that are struggling, so many people that are having a hard time, and they need you. These people need you to inspire them. They need you to encourage them. Give them that kick up the arse to say, if I'm doing this, then you can do even less than it. It doesn't have to be the same. You can go bigger. The amount of my clients that got better than me, that's still a good thing. That's still a triumph in my mind. I don't really care how good you get. If it's better than me, then so be it. You know, I still played my part. So then I started to look at, okay, well, how can I do it? How can I do this thing? And then I used to follow like Tony Robbins and Brendan Burchard and all those people. We all spoke on stage. I thought that'd be amazing to do. To be able to stand there and have people hear you. That's it. All they do is turn up in whatever they decided to wear that day and talk. And I just thought, it was a bit lazy, but equally, like, I could see myself doing it. Lazy as in, like, you haven't got to, like, do a whole lot. You just turn up and talk. At least that was what I thought. Like, different story. Now I know that that's not really what goes on. But at the beginning, I just thought, that sounds amazing to be able to do that. Speak on stage and have people be inspired, motivated, give them tools they need, and they can go ahead and do it and improve their life in some way. That felt like the peak to me. That felt like the pinnacle of what I was able to do.
That is amazing. That is definitely, yeah, that is incredible. I mean, yeah, I mean, this podcast has literally flown through so much that I tell you what, Michael, tell everybody how to get my introvert journey to being visible. But we'll put all the links below. But tell us how to get it, buddy.
Well, if they're listening to this before the 19th of November, then, excuse me, then you can join the waiting list for the book. So I've created a waiting list for people who want to get reminders. They want to be told when it goes live without having to scroll through social media all the time, because we all know how daunting social media can be these days.
Yeah.
If you're listening to it on the 19th or after the 19th, then it'll be on Amazon, wherever you can get your books.
Nice, awesome stuff. Because what we'll do, Michael, is that this will come out a couple of days before the 19th, but of course we'll also put the links down when it appears, and yeah, so that people can, you know, be fully informed. You know what I mean? Absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, well, I have to say, Michael. Actually, no, wait, it's coming out on the 9th of November. Yeah, 9th of November. My apologies. Yeah, so yep. So definitely people check out the waiting list. And yeah, Michael, do you have any final words to say before we got to shoot off, my friend? Because I've learned so much, and I wish I'd met you earlier, man. Like, this has been great.
Well, the only thing that I would probably leave with is one of the best things that ever happened to me was realizing that the more people share the journey of what they've gone through, the easier it's been for me to understand that I don't have to stop just because it's hard.
Yeah.
If you've got the assumption that it's easy to do everything and you find it difficult, you won't do anything. But if someone says, you know, starting a podcast is difficult, you've got the responsibility, you've got the consistency, you've got to think long term with it. You can't just think 4 shows in. You've got to think 4 months in, 4 years in. Otherwise, you're going to give up. And when people share the fact that it's not easy, when someone else goes through it and it's not easy for them, they won't stop because you didn't, even though it was hard. So they have got the permission.
Yeah.
They've got the experience from you. They've got the knowledge that they don't have to just stop doing something when it gets difficult. But if no one shares the fact that it does get hard sometimes, when it's hard for them, they won't think it's for them. They won't think that they're good enough to do it. They won't think that they can do it, and they'll hate themselves for even thinking that they could. So I want more people to do the things that I have done, because I share just how difficult it is, so that when they do it and they come up against obstacles, they question themselves, they don't know if they can do it, they know that I did that as well. They know that I freak out. They know that I struggle.
Absolutely.
And that isn't enough to stop.
Absolutely. And you know what? For all those that haven't followed his socials yet, it is The Michael Bryan on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. That's correct, yeah?
It is, yeah, that's right.
Absolutely. And everybody, big thank you to Michael Bryan for this episode. This has been DrayZera from DrayZera Uncensored. And yes, thank you very much. And Michael, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you very much. And we shall zera later. Goodbye.